Dear listeners, with the passage of time, every generation will have different expectations of its leaders. What's changed over the years? What has not changed? What does it take to lead in a highly complex, brittle, and non-linear world? I know one such leader who, over 35 years, has not just negotiated with human complexity but continues to serve as a coach and guide to multiple CEOs and leaders. My guest today is none other than the illustrious Prabir Jha, who has been a global CHRO of Fortune 500 and New York Stock Exchange listed organizations. He is also a TEDx speaker and a board advisor to several startups and leading multinational enterprises. It was truly an honor and privilege to host Prabir, whose advice is timely, profound, and thought provoking. I enjoyed every bit of our conversation, and I hope you do too. Stay tuned for more. Good morning, Prabir. It's truly an honor and privilege to have you here today. Prabir, you are probably the reason why most of us decided to pursue a career in HR. Over 3 decades, you have shaped and built leaders from the ground, transformed them, and helped organizations scale, see them grow as well. From a career in civil services to becoming a CHRO of global conglomerates such as Tata Motors, Reliance, Dr. Reddy's, Cipla, to finding your own firm, your own voice through Prabir Jha Advisory, you are a strategic thought leader who continues to shape modern leadership through timeless principles. It is a dream come true for me, Prabir.
Thank, thank you, Priyanshu, for all the nice words. But thank you very much for finding it worth, spending time having this conversation. Truly obliged. Thank you.
Thanks, Prabir. The honor is mine. So, 3 decades, or even probably more than that, hundreds,
35 years almost
35
now.
years,
Yeah.
hundreds of conversations, thousands of strategic insights. What's changed? What's still not changed in leadership?
And very interesting. It's a great question. It's very interesting. People would ask me, particularly post COVID, COVID leadership in post COVID times vis-a-vis. And I would say, actually, what has changed? The fundamentals of leadership will never change. How can you ever say that integrity will have a shelf life, or authenticity will have a shelf life, or courage will have a shelf life? You know, they are timeless, and it will continue forever. What has possibly changed is the way you start applying it, because the microscope is on you every second of the day. There is nothing like office hours and non-office hours. I'm something else sometime else. That doesn't work. People observe you through what you write, what you speak, where you are, how you behave, beyond just those pulpit moments where you are on your best behavior and you're wanting to appear different. So I think the scrutiny levels have dramatically changed. The response time has changed. The patience for leadership effect has changed. People are not willing to give you 35 years to prove your leadership. It is leadership on the go. You've got to kind of impact, influence, and make a difference every minute. You've got to hit a century on every track every time. So the ask of leadership has changed, but the quintessential elements of leadership, I think, are still as evergreen as they always were, and as I believe they will always will be.
So that's an interesting perspective, Prabir. So when we say leadership on the go, is it right to expect leaders to go ahead and be their best version, make the right choices every single time? Um, how difficult it must be to carry that burden. How does one do that?
It is very difficult, but it doesn't change expectations. You want me to be the best version in this conversation with you, and someone else wants to see me an hour later, to be the best version of myself in that interaction and the next moment, and so on and so forth. You see, the challenge of being a leader is you've got to appeal and be relevant to different constituencies at the same time. And that's what not every leader understands. To be a leader of your non-reporting relationships is very different than being the boss of your team. So every boss can think I'm a great leader because that's what your reports will tell you.
mm,
But are you seen as a leader by people who observe you from the sidelines, from your customers, from people who don't even know you? So at the end of the day, it is very difficult. And all of us will have a weak moment. We will have a blip. Do you apologize, regret, and move on, or do you try to explain it or deny everything? It's back to my same point. It is very difficult being a leader today in a absolutely dialed up, wired in a world where everyone has a point of view. you know your chauffeur has a point of view, your household staff has a point of view, your secretary has a point of view. And that is why I feel leadership is still a very, very difficult art, and it is a very rare strength that I find in so-called many positional holders, because to be able to be a leader through all these elements at almost all times is theoretically impossible. But are you approximating towards that? And so when I coach a lot of senior executives in my new life, I mean, many people say, but Prabir, ye mera style hai. This is my Tismar Khan style. And I just sometimes chuckle. How can there be one ubiquitous leadership style a guy can live with? I mean, in a multi-generational workforce, in a multicultural workforce, in an environment where life and work is almost blurred, you've got to develop a range of leadership styles and influences, and then be able to pick what is relevant and works with a certain set of people. What works with you will not work with someone else. And it is not being living in an art of acting. It is developing that plethora of options, that I can actually be the leader as relevant to a context, to a person. So it is difficult, it is not easy, but that is why people need to always be in a source of pausing, reflecting, redoing. But unfortunately, it's human nature. Most of us always want to live in our past. We don't want to get out of our comfort zones, right? We just continue to be what we've always been. And I think that is not a recipe for success.
so many definitions of leadership that we come across, and it is one, let's say, topic that probably has the most number of books written about it, and still the world seems as if it needs more good quality leadership than average quality leadership that's in abundance right now.
Yeah.
How do you see leadership, Prabir?
See, I don't know about how I see leadership. The question I would have is, how does followership see leadership?
Wow.
At the end of the day, every leader, every individual may have his or her view of leadership. It doesn't matter. What matters is your target followership seeing you as the leader you want to be? And that is the kind of, it treads into the realm of personal brand also. So I don't think leaders make leaders of themselves. Every boy or every girl was a boy or a girl next door once upon a time. Today people think that they are great leaders. Why do some people think of X, Y, and Z as great leaders, and they think of equally accomplished people as lousy leaders? It is how the world perceives you, it's how the world experiences you. And I think, therefore, it's very important to understand that how does your leadership connect, relate, appeal to that followership that possibly could be target. And sometimes you don't even know who's your followership. It is not your Twitter or LinkedIn followers, right? I mean, you don't know everyone. I mean, you don't even know how many lives you touch or how many lives you upset by decisions, words, comments, inputs, advice, counsel that you do. Because everyone picks what he or she wants to pick from a leader, and finally you create a gestalt. And the gestalt, as the followership perceives, makes the leader that you finally are seen to be. Otherwise, it will be unfair for me to say Priyanshu is a leader or Prabir is a leader, or we may not be leaders. The question is leaders for whom, in what context, for what reason. And if you are able to make many more people, kind of nod and agree and say, I trust the guy, I would follow the guy, I would agree to do what the guy, because everyone, Priyanshu, remember, has a choice. He or she has a choice to follow you as a follower or not follow you as a follower, right? Only when you're the boss you can still kind of hijack some bit of that power status and get the guy to do what you want. Otherwise you can't. Anyone, everyone is a free person. And I think therefore people have to just re-understand what leadership is and see it not from their lens or from Prabir's lens, but to see it from the lens of followership. So in many ways, how I view leadership, right, in the way I've explained. But I very strongly believe followers make leaders, leaders don't make followers.
That's such a profound statement, right? Because it absolutely debunks the entire piece of position leadership. So you gain energy and power from people deciding to follow you, not the other way around. So again, what I'm probably thinking around the same points, Prabir. For instance, there could be so many followers, so many people who have so many different expectations from the same person. And now, when you look at geopolitics, when you look at different, let's say, complexities that come into the workforce, for instance, let's say different generations that come,
Yes,
different ways of working, hybrid, not hybrid,
correct.
remote, and you have multi, let's say, dimensional challenges across organizations, and everyone has a very different demand for the particular man or woman at the top, the CEO. And I think that that's why a lot of CEOs are also resigning, far higher than the numbers we've seen before. So I think the demands have become multifaceted. Is it still worthwhile, the position of a CEO? Is it something that one should still aspire for?
I don't know. See, again, it depends on the person. Many years ago, 25 years ago, I remember I was working with a well-known IT firm. Of course, it's known by another name today. And, I would do these induction sessions for batches of these IITians who would come in. And I remember asking these guys that, how many of you would want to be a CEO? Every hand would go up in the room. This is 99, 2000, around that time. And then I would ask, how many of you would want to be a CEO in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And the hands would kind of change depending on whatever it is. See, why does one want to be a CEO? And I say this now with 35 years behind me. The honest answer is you want to be a CEO because it appears that the CEO is the big guy in town. He's the guy who has the best salary, he has the best car, he has the best office, and blah, blah, blah. And this applies to careers as well, right? So that's why you aspire. It is not that I want to change the world. I mean, that is a UPSC answer, right? But actually, that doesn't necessarily apply. So the question, therefore, is that you want it because it's just proves you're human, because that's aspiration. You want the biggest job, or like a politician would be a president or a prime minister for the same reason, right? I mean, it's a logical thing. But the question that you've asked is a relevant one, and I'm saying that it is no sin. And again, I've said this for years now. It is no sin to not aspire to be a CEO. I mean, some days I think I should have got onto the CEO track maybe 15 years ago, because I was an HR guy by accident. I was not a management trainee, assistant manager, senior manager. I mean, I was a civil servant who, for a different reason, came in the world of HR. And I should have. I did not, because I was doing well in HR. I was liking HR. But if I did not make a CEO or become a CEO, does it make me any less important? I think I earned as much as many CEOs don't earn. I think I have a better reputation than what many CEOs don't have. And most important of all, you have been a Rajguru to CEOs, where CEOs actually have done what you have advised them to do,
Yeah.
which is even more complex. Now, it doesn't take the credit or the lure of the CEO ship away, but it doesn't make not wanting to be a CEO or not becoming a CEO, any lesser, in terms of impact, influence, or significance. But you can be a CEO for all the right reasons as well. Because at the end of the day, if you think you can build a business out differently, you can leave an organization stronger, you can actually grow your people very differently, you can actually bring a different level of governance and role modeling to play. Why not?
mm, mm,
Because yes, you do get more spotlight than relatively other role holders. So but as they say, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. So yes, if you get the big money, you get the big spotlight, you also have to take the flak. And that is where a lot of the uh, hypocrisy of leadership gets practiced. Credit is all mine,
mm,
but failures, I will find the relevant scapegoats. And I see it all across, whether they are big companies or small companies.
mm,
And that again proves that CEOs are human beings, because it's all about self perpetuation, survival.
mm,
But that's not the CEO I would like to see. The CEO should actually take the moral responsibility for many things that you may not directly be doing.
mm,
But as politicians have got thick skin, so have CEOs, right? So is it still worth it? Maybe the answer is yes. But for everyone, the answer is no. So again, the question is, to each his own or her own. But if you choose to be in the hot seat, learn to be a CEO of substance, of character,
mm,
and not of self perpetuation. And that is something which is still quite disappointing when you look at, and at least the last 6 years I've been more a commentator on this, with and without any act of inhibition. And I think that CEOs have a lot of ground to cover to truly be seen as remarkable leaders. Because I, for one, do not see CEOship as only about market cap and quarter on quarter. That is an important dimension, but it's not the only dimension. I mean, I see CEOship more about the kind of leaders that they grow, the kind of leaders that they are, the kind of cultures that they are able to create and nurture, the kind of spine that they are willing to see. And I will be honest, I speak to people all the time, or people speak to me all the time. And many more of leaders in the so called corner
mm.
offices or in C suites are privately more ridiculed and demeaned, and less trusted than they are valued and appreciated. This is the honest fact. Forget whatever any engagement survey score gives as HR people we know. The truth is far more grim than what we see in an engagement score.
Because you touched upon that uh, beautiful word, character, and saying that CEOs must define that character first, and which probably reflects into thinking about others, putting others before self. And people have spoken about it multiple times. I've heard personally speak about it in hundreds of conversations when it comes to coaching. I've seen people like Simon Sinek speak about it, start with why and leading others first. What does it take in your personal journey that you have seen? What does it take to truly build that value or build one's character for a period of time? From practical examples.
So, one is you must have a lot of courage, and second is you must have a lot of vulnerability. Now, this sound very oxymoronic, right? But that is why leadership is on the one hand and on the other hand. It is both.
Mm,
And it takes courage to say, I don't have an answer. It takes courage to say, I made a wrong call. It takes courage to say, hey, this behavior of mine was not above board.
mm,
It takes courage to kind of accept criticism or a counter in a meeting. And you will do that only when you're willing to be vulnerable. If you think that just because, as one CEO told me, he was my uh, global CEO in Tata Motors, he was an expat, a guy I admire and I still am in touch with. I mean, he told me once that he says, Prabir, just because I'm the highest paid executive in the firm does not mean I have all the answers. I may not even have all the questions. How many CEOs say that? How many? So when I look at people where I can, as a CHRO, tell him that I don't think what you're thinking is the right thing to do. I don't think this will go down. And the guy, another CEO, I had the opportunity of working many years ago. It's a firm you and I have both spent some years in. When he was telling me to do something, and I was dead against it. I don't think it was the right thing to do. And the whole week passed, and I did not execute after them that debate and the so-called decision of the CEO. On a Monday morning, I still remember the CEO came to me and he says, Prabir, what's the status of that convert? I said, no, I haven't acted on it yet. And he smiled and he says, I knew you wouldn't. And I'm glad you didn't, because what you were telling me is the better thing to do. So there these examples of CEOs who are willing to kind of, but is it the norm? No, it's not the norm. So character comes from fundamental courage, which builds or allows you to be vulnerable. And most important of all, each one has a very different standard of integrity. And integrity is just not financial integrity. Integrity is the congruence of thinking, saying, and doing. And not everyone is great there. I know of so many CEOs, again, CEOs I've worked with, who have promised you things
Mm, mm,
and they have not delivered even an iota of that. Why did you make a promise? Either you were not able to fulfill, you should have not have made a promise, or if you never intended to fulfill the promise, you should not have made the promise. So I also have these kind of experiences of CEOs, of working with CEOs, right? So and in my own little way, I mean, people who worked on my teams have heard this from me many many times, company after company. First I'll say it in Hindi, then I'll translate it. I've always said that, I have, मैं अपना resignation pocket में लेके नौकरी करता हूँ. Maybe you've also heard it from some people, right? I have always said that. Now it is a way of saying it, because at the end of the day, I will do what is right. Now, my right is my right. I'm not saying that it is perpetual right. I do not know. But that's what my conscience would allow me to do. That's what I think I am mandated to do. Not because the CEO likes it, the chairman likes it. What, as the CHRO, do you think is your fiduciary accountability? And the same will apply to a CEO, since you asked me a question on the CEO. But the unfortunate reality is the human need for self perpetuation, for my highest bonus, my this thing. At least from my experience, I don't think any chief executive or boss of mine in my entire career of 35 years can ever say, Prabir came to me to ask something for himself. My promotion, my increment, my salary, my stock, or whatever else. So the moral high ground is always with you. I don't think many CEOs do that, including in their conversations with boards. I know so many stories of how CEOs will start kind of or leak this information that so and so is trying to headhunt the CEO. You know, and this is very conveniently done 3 months, 4 months, and I've seen pattern. This is a first-hand experience with some CEOs, and therefore, what does the board do? They make sure that you get a better deal, you get a better bonus and stuff like that. So I'm not saying it happens with everyone, but it happens.
mm,
So I think ultimately it comes down to your sense of personal integrity. What do you think is non negotiable? See, if you're willing to sell yourself, I mean, in any way, it's not just financial. I mean, then there'll always be a buyer or a giver, right? The question is, how do you stand tall, keep your respect, do what is right? Not that everyone will like what you do, because it hurts turfs, it hurts silos, it hurts entrenched leaders. Leadership is not an easy job, but if you do that and you do it without fear or favor and without anything in it for you, then you're a leader of substance. So it's a journey, and it takes a lot for a leader to either grow through his or her experiences into one such leader, or to be open to criticism, feedback, coaching, to say, what, this is not what is right. And because I said it is a wholesome thing. It's not just about delivering a number or a product or a market share or whatever else. I mean, then it's not a leadership job alone, right? But so I think companies, and in my own advisory experience of the last 6 years, uh, I have seen this with clients, with potential clients. Everyone says the right things, on the top of it. This is what we want to be. Everyone wants to be world class. Everyone wants to be high performing. Everyone wants to have a culture which is great. But the problem often starts with the top. And this is the unfortunate, brutal truth. And if you're not willing to change yourself, don't expect anyone below you to change. So and I can get away with murder because for me, it doesn't matter whether you sign the deal with me or not. But I see this very, very often. And that's why I call, leadership has become more the art of hypocrisy than the power of service or impact. So I guess that's where the reality of the world uh, lies.
And just to really, if you want to take a dipstick in what leaders come to you when they want coaching, or whether it's the organization wanting them to reach out to you, saying that, hey, you have to really look deep, you have to think differently, and here's a conversation Prabir, that you get into to really transform yourself, or they seeking a voluntary conversation with you to truly transform themselves. What do they go ahead and how do those conversations shape? What do you often see as this common trend in those conversations?
So a common strand definitely is very normative. The world in which we have to lead is changing. We want to change ourselves, which is very nice. Some of them say that we've grown into these roles. I've never been a CEO before. uh, you know I need to kind of go beyond a functional role holder. So it starts like that. But when I start coaching, it could, and I coach many chairmen of companies, many CEOs, multinational Indian companies, publicly listed companies, startup promoters, all shades and sizes. But the common thing that I find in most is the tendency of wanting to explain and rationalize. And that is one of my biggest knocks that I have to do for my first breakthrough. You wanted to change, but you don't owe to explain to me. You don't need to explain even to yourself. You cannot build a future by always looking in the rear view mirror. It's played its part. It's got you to a point. Now, in a Barney world, you cannot talk about a world of 1980s, right? It calls for a very different fitment of a leader. So I think the common thing which starts is all very positive, but the issues, Priyanshu, you'll be surprised at some level. And you ask me a question, what has changed and not changed our leadership? Again, I'm reinforcing that same issues of toxic leadership, because I also do some 360-degree kind of feedback. Many of them have, whether it's extreme toxicity is a matter of interpretation and debate, but elements of toxic leadership very common. uh, Very low delegation, low trust, very common. uh, Very poor communication, very important. Playing favorites, poor listener. uh, I mean, these almost seem so typical. 80% of C-suite coaching experience that I've had, and I'm discounting all that I may have done in my executive life, this in the so-called my new life, the pattern is the same. And this is across cultures, across industries, across tenure, scale, and size. Same problems. So when some things are so typical, so I joke sometimes, when either the companies or the CHROs will reach out, or whoever reaches out, I tell them that why wouldn't you think of inviting a Prabir to help when these guys would have been middle management? Now they are top management, they're senior management. Now you're willing to pay me whatever it takes. But I'll be honest, if they are a mule, I can make the guy a better mule. I can't make him a stallion. It's too late in the day. So I think companies should invest in getting middle management to be better leaders, invest in coaching them. But you know what happens, Priyangshu, and I will say I will struggle to think of who are role models for me in my own executive life. There is no one for sure. Maybe not even my dad. Forget any big name in the corporate world that I would want to be like him or her. No one. I don't want to be like him or her. There are aspects I would love to emulate or learn from X, Y, and Z. Like I would from my sabzi wala from whom I buy my sabzis, or maybe from my driver. There are certain elements. So when people say, Praveen, we want to be like you, I said, God forbid. Take some dimensions as relevant from me, but don't take many things which are not relevant, or maybe those are my weaknesses. So I think building self awareness, building better role modeling. And I thought the new age startups will build a new culture, a different culture of leadership. Unfortunately, I don't see that happening. They may become a unicorn, so they tick off the revenue or the business, success boxes. But do they become great cultures? Do they become very respected organizations? And you'll know some names, who have also collapsed like a pack of cards after having become a unicorn. So these are very deep systemic issues, and not everyone loves honesty. No one loves, straight talk. And I tell a lot of people who reach out to me that if you're looking for a quote poet, please do not invite me, because in this life I'll not be one. I can be your best friend, but I'll also be your worst critic. If then you think it makes sense, get me to be your Rajguru, your advisor, and your partner in crime. But do not come to say, Priyangshu, what a great leader you are, oh, everything. And I know so many people who actually just say this, even in big companies, because they are all looking at a longer sinecure. How will I land a job, or an assignment or something even after my retirement? So it is from the outside now disappointing. I wish there were more people of spine and substance than you actually have. And uh, and this is my view. I may be wrong, but this has been my view as I observe. And I don't think that necessarily passes my threshold of what leadership is.
Prabir, this is so profound and so deep, and so it connects so well. If I can really go ahead and ask probably two more questions around the same, right? Because I really want to expand this piece. We used to have role models in the past, which now has, like you said, it's decreased, and it's very difficult to even have one role model for everything that you aspire for. Everyone has a different definition of leadership, right? So, in a system that's so broken, one, as you said, that probably we need to be more self aware and we can learn from the environment to take lessons from people around us. What else could be done to surmount or overcome these insecurities, rather, to build leaders of
Of
success?
people who will be role models, or of people who are wanting to look for role models?
Both.
So let's look at people to be a role model. See, some role models are too distant. So a lot gets camouflaged because no one ever gets to know, right? You're too distant. So what you see is a very curated version of that person.
Mm,
And normally these are people who have armies of people who drum the beat, right? So you say, my God, what a great guy, what a great innovator, what a great, it's that, and politicians are particularly great examples, but in the corporates also, there are enough such characters. But you know what you also start noticing is that they start falling off being potential role models for many others. That this is not an authentic version of the person. This is not the natural. It comes through that it's overly curated. It's too good. It's very botoxed, so to speak. Right? The persona or the reputation is too botoxed. So that is one. So the counsel or advice I would have for people who want to be seen as role models to whichever
mm,
constituency that they are addressing: be yourself. Do things which actually make a difference, people can relate with. And there are some things that people are desperately missing today. They are missing authenticity, they are missing empathy. You have many humanoid leaders, you don't have human leaders. They want to see that here is a human, he can have his or she can have his weak moments. It's okay to fail. You're more available to them. I mean, guys, I can tell you, even in the CHRO community, and I get this feedback from a lot of people, and I feel embarrassed sometimes because that's not been my reputation or my experience. They say, Prabir, I mean, I have seen my CHRO once in some virtual town hall. That's it. What is the CHRO busy with? What is the CEO so busy with? I mean, I ran some of the biggest HR jobs in my own career, and I mean, I had no job to do. My job was only to meet people, because your job is not to do a job three levels lower. So that's one from the role model side. For people who want to see or look for role modeling, my counsel to them is, what do you seek in that role model? Now, it is human, Priyanshu, but it is, in my mind, sometimes a little misleading when what you're seeing in that person is only success. Life is not going to be as rosy for most of us as what we see in that role model. And success has a price to pay. We see success, we don't know the price he or she has paid for that success. And I, for one, would want not only a successful person as my role model, but a person of substance, a person of resilience. Many people say, Prabir, it's so fascinating to see the way you've kind of built a brand about yourself. I have never planned to build a brand about myself. I have never worked on building a brand. And it is you who builds a brand. I don't build a brand. No individual builds a brand. It's the people, again, it's the same, the followership. But I've tried to remain as grounded as always. Now, something as simple and stupid as that adds to your appeal. That I've never worked with you, Prabir, but I can get to have a conversation with you. I just feel that, my God, you're so relatable. So, at the end of the day, people are looking for role models should ask. Of course, it's good to see inspiration. It is good. And for me, I remember, I don't even know the person, but it's a story which is a role model story for me. If you'll allow me, I'll
Sure,
share this.
please.
It was my first private sector job, out, fresh out of college, fresh out of my civil service days. And in the government, you don't typically hire, you don't fire, right? It's a very different world. So I was at one of the engineering colleges, well known engineering colleges, and that was my first so called campus hiring experience. And I had gone with a technical functional colleague of mine, senior colleague of mine, and we finished this thing. And in that guy's resume or whatever, I saw gaps in his school, So I said, I see gaps. So why are these gaps? And he said, no, my father was moving from place to place, so sometimes I had to adjust. So my logical question possibly was he in the government? Government transfers people and all that. And the guy said, no, sir. And he had done a fantastic interview so far. Fantastic interview. We love the guy. And I said, so what does he do? Now, someone can say, why did you have to ask the question? With hindsight, maybe not, but I asked the question. And the guy said, no, sir, he's a gardener. So I thought I heard it wrong. I said, is he a farmer? He said, no, sir, he's a gardener. Right now, he's a gardener in a society in Pune. So, you know, of course, the interview ended, everything happened. I came back and I told my wife, this country has a future, not because of us. Imagine this guy, he's kind of moving from place to place because his father is looking for jobs, etc. And he's got to this place, and and he was fantastic. And I don't know his name now. I don't know where he is, but I can tell you he would be doing very, very well. So for me, that the story is a role model. So at the end of the day, Don't just go for the glitz and glamour. That could be very misleading. Look for the soul, the substance. And that, and as you've also rightly picked up, and I said that up front, no one can be a role model for everything. When I speak to a lot of younger HR guys, I said, if you'd learn nothing else from me, one thing, yes, you should learn is courage. Very few CHROs have the dabang, the courage, the candor that I have. Very few, right? That you pick from me. You don't learn anything else from me. But maybe there are others who have many other dimensions. And in that, you will pick something which is the right bouquet for you. So these are my two bits, those who are so called role models and those who are wanting to look for role models.
That was so inspirational, Prabir. In fact, I was about to ask that in the broken world that we live in today of leadership, what gives you hope? But I think I got the answer already when you said that stories like this, uh, everyday stories that are in fact extraordinary when you look at it from that.
Correct. And there are such wonderful stories. There are such wonderful stories. You know, my father was in the IPS. We had a very comfortable but a very disciplined growing up life. I was a reasonably good student, so went to the best schools, colleges, did very well. First shot cleared the UPSC. I mean, so if I did what I did, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? When I hear my father's story, my grandfather was a poor school teacher. And when I hear stories of how my father walked wherever to go to a government Zilla school, that kind of an education, and then to have competed in the IPS at the age of 20, first shot, I mean, that is inspiration. Now, would I therefore want to be like my father in entirety? No, I would not. I think is far too brusque than is needed. I wish I was more like my mother. But so you learn different, but you gain a lot of things. This is how you would be a self-made man, an honest man. So we should look for elements in each person and say, this is what I want to pick from this person. The problem is we want to start. In fact, my LinkedIn post today, if you read, is almost alluding to the same thing. You should not be looking at a clone of another person because no two people are identical and they should not be. They should not be. So, and part of the problem is I had joined a company, a very big company once. And for the first 3 months, I was told about a gentleman who was in that big role that I was in for many, many years, but he had passed away some years ago. And finally, I couldn't contain it anymore. I said, let me be very honest and be very sorry about it. He must have been a great guy, but I'm not him. And I have no intention of being him. Because what he did in his context must have been great, but I know what I have inherited. It is bullshit. It is absolute bullshit what I have inherited. Right? So I will do what I find relevant, and maybe someone later who comes after me should say the same thing. Because we all make a difference in our context, in our time. I mean, who am I to say that my grand successor in a job should not change anything I did? Because the context is so different. And people get sensitive about these things. And maybe this is what the civil service taught me, because you finish your posting, there's no notice period in the government. You hand over charge the next morning, and you can see your successor maybe changing a decision on file. But you don't take it to heart. It's fine. You did what was right till yesterday. Today, that guy's in the job. Let him decide what is good. From the way he understands. So I think it it gave me a tremendous mooring when I look back that I've never gone back to an ex company of mine either even for soliciting work or even just for old time's sake. No, give that company their space, give their people their space. What's happening in that company? Good luck for them, But I mean, I don't want because it's just not on. And that's my personal philosophy. Others may have a disagreement. Do I attend the odd alumni meet? I do, but I don't go back to that office. You should know how gracefully to move on. You left the government, you came to the corporate. I don't look back at where my batchmates are and how they are doing. That's a call you made. I don't look back at the corporate world. I look at what I am doing, and am I spreading enough sunshine that I am possibly confident of doing? I'm doing my little bit and I'm happy. So this is an important conditioning of leaders and leadership, even as they kind of go through their own journey, because people are far too stuck in the past than they need to be.
For a long time, Prabir, I'll be honest, I've wrestled with questions like how does one create legacy? How does one leave legacy behind? Right? So, but the way you look at it, which is the impermanence of all of it, what's the point of legacy? It'll be eroded by somebody else who takes charge. And if you go ahead and consciously look at building legacy, then probably you're maybe becoming too self centered. You don't want to let go of certain things. But this way is so refreshing and so new to me. And honestly, thanks, Prabhu, for sharing this. Like,
No, thank you. But for the question, and also it is very liberating. I'll give you a small anecdote. I was in Edinburgh
mm,
with my two children some years ago. We were, and must have made a post that Edinburgh, and someone connected with me saying he's from one of my ex companies, a very giant organization, and he said, "Sir, I'm doing my MBA here, or finishing my MBA, and I just want to meet you, etc." My children, I still remember, said, "Dad, come on, you're on vacation and all that." But you feel that here in Edinburgh, a guy has been so sweet to comment on that post. So I said, "Okay, I'll be at this hour at the Royal Mile or whatever that road which was there. So if it suits you, catch up somewhere there." And I forgot about it. And the next day at that hour, I could hear somewhere someone was saying, Prabir sir. And after some time, just looked back, and there was a guy trying to catch up. And he actually touched my feet. And he said, "I just want to thank you for the kind of work you did when you were the CHRO of this particular company, and how you changed, and how lakhs of people, worship you, and how you made their life better, blah, blah, blah." I said, "I did only what I thought was the right thing for me to do at that time, nothing more. And it is not me. I mean, finally, the leadership accepted it, the team delivered on it." So, he said, "No, sir, we all know." Now, the fact is, people get to know who's the guy thinking, because why someone before me never thought about it, why someone after me has not thought about it. But the legacy issue is again what you cannot demand. The legacy. And I continue to get mailers from different companies from my government days, even till today, from people. That's how there was never an officer we met like you. Even I was a 22, 23-year-old guy when this person, must have reported to me, and much retired, much older. And he says, I've never seen an officer like you, sir, except when you came. Now it's God's blessing. It's God's blessing. I was in HR in my entire career, in the government or outside. Not one gate meeting, not one I've had where they said Prabir Jha, whatever Jha Saab, Murdabad. Not one. So whether you're talking to unions, and as a 25-year-old guy, I had 25 unions and federations I was dealing with. Not one. So it can't be a coincidence when come innings after innings, tenure after tenure. And that goes back to almost your opening question about leadership, about you have to do it very selflessly. And if you've done it right, and you've done what you think was the right thing, your legacy by default gets created, your reputation gets built. And that's why I tell a lot of younger people today that your reputation precedes your resume in today's networked world. I would already have known someone who has known you, and so what do you think of him, what do you think of him? So when I'm interviewing the guy, I'm not asking the same usual stupid trite question, right? I'm just validating now. So it's a fascinating life. God has been extremely kind. I honestly think I'm no super person. I mean, that someone like you would want to talk to me. I mean, I'm literally the boy next door, even today, But yeah, I can hold my head high. That is without doubt. And God has been kind. I have never asked, and I hope never comes a time where I have to ask for a favor of someone, because I know also how ungrateful the world is, Priyanshu. I mean, more people, or let's put it this way, there are very few people who hold gratitude dear, who will say, "Hey, you know what? That's an IOU on me," or "Let me at least send you a thank you note." And I have zillions of experiences. So even today, people will call typically for a favor. You know, it's always for a favor, and I always tell God, I just hope I never have to seek favors, because When you don't need anything from anyone, you can be yourself.
Wow. Wow. My last question to you, Prabir. If not Prabir the coach, or Prabir the leader, or Prabir the strategic advisor, or Prabir the ex-CHROs of global firms, who else would Prabir be?
Oh, Prabir would have been many things. Many things. I had topped All India in my plus two. And I remember my school magazine had done an interview with me. I was going to college. So, it says, Prabir, what would you like to be? But, coming from a place like Bihar, civil services almost by default, if you're a bright guy, you will write the UPSC. So they asked me, what would you be wanting to do? I said, ideally, I would love to be in the civil service. Otherwise, I think I'll make a great journalist.
Wow.
And now, when I see a lot of television, which was not there at that time, really, I would have been a very good TV journalist. I would have been a very good TV anchor. Uh, my father-in-law, my children will always tell me, Dad, you would have been an outstanding lawyer in the courtroom. You have left so many crores on the table by choosing the wrong line. You would have been a great lawyer. And maybe sometimes, because in the government particularly, I there was a lot of law related stuff I was doing. I loved it. So I would have been a good lawyer. Today, when I have my interest in cooking, especially non-vegetarian curries, you see sometimes on social media, I think I would make a great chef or open a great small little restaurant. Who knows tomorrow? So there are so many things one could have done. But having said that, do I regret? Again, life is too short for regrets. I followed my heart. I've done whatever I wanted at that time. People like you have asked me that, Prabir, do you regret leaving this? Do you regret resigning here? I said no. Every decision of mine at that point in time was the right decision. I never look back saying, "Oh, that was it." It for me, it was the right decision. Something happened for the company, something may have happened. Good luck. But I breathe easy, I breathe free. I live in an independent, free country, and you know, God has been kind. So thank you.
Thanks, Prabir. As we wrap up this conversation today, Prabir, there's so many takeaways I have. One is, of course, it starts with what has changed, what has not changed about leadership. Are the same human, let's say, insecurities, or the human strengths that have stood by time. Second is about the role models that we try to seek. We need to figure out what we want to find first in others, and then probably start looking at those. Sometimes it's in one person, but more often than not, it's in multitude personalities and maybe even stories, ordinary stories, that are extraordinary in retrospect. And for people who would want to role model, they also have to find similar journey of discovering their self and becoming the true self. And it's more often about what followers want than what leaders want, because everybody wants a different set of leader or who can lead them and who trust them. And I think that one thing that I take away more than anything else is the ability to stand true in the face of both success and defeat, to be courageous to yourself first, to be a man of substance rather than a man of success. I think those are so powerful takeaways, Prabir. Even the question of legacy, that you don't go ahead and look at leadership as building legacy. Legacy is just a byproduct. You keep doing what you do every day, and you spread your sunshine, your ray of hope, and soon it happens on its own, just like your own brand. And one thing I know for certain, Prabir, that you may not have walked the path of a lawyer in the private life, but you have definitely fought for what's right for so many of us. And in doing that, you have really made great leaders. Thanks so much, Prabir, for your time.
Thank you so much, Priyanshu, again for your time. It's been a pleasure. Your questions are very, very bang on, and this is great service for people who are interested, in watching your show. I think you're picking a lot of traction. So God bless you, and good luck always.
Thanks so much, Prabir, for saying.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, it stopped recording.